Well, good evening, IB Nation, and welcome to another edition of IB Nation Sports Talk. I'm Vince D'Addario. That guy right over there is our special guest on IB Nation Sports Talk. That's Brian Driscoll. He is the czar of Driscoll Publishing, and he is here to lend his expertise to the mailbag, our Wednesday mailbag, and because our boy Sean Stiers is en route with the women's basketball team. They're on the road, and I should have looked to see where they were headed, but their game is tomorrow night. So he's on the road. I don't know where where in the world is Sean Stiers. I don't know where he is, but he's with the women's basketball team. So he is not going to grace us with his presence today. But Brian, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing well, and they're on their way to Boston, by the way.
Thank you.
Boston they play the Eagles, yes.
Okay. All right.
So
hopefully they can bounce back from their loss to NC State.
Yeah, it's a tough one. You know,
it was.
Down not only losing Mabry, but not having Ebo on that. She's been so good in the paint this year for them, and they just played flat, I think.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, and when Sean and I talked about it, it was like they always seem to have a quarter where they just can't hit the broadside of a barn, for lack of a better term.
Well, and that's the one thing that Mabry brought to the roster. I mean,
yeah.
I'm sure leadership and all that stuff, but just as a basketball player, really the only reason to have her on the court is because if she gets hot, she can knock down threes.
Absolutely.
And they didn't have that. And then they didn't have that big presence down low to kind of help get some offensive boards. And, you know, and she's really good on the defensive glass, starting fast breaks, getting the offense going that way, you know, things like that. So it's just one of those nights. And I mean, they've played a tough schedule so far. I mean, the ACC is really good this year.
Sure.
And so you're going to have nights like that, but they'll bounce back. I have a feeling Boston College is going to catch one tomorrow. Because this team has been pretty good when it comes to losing. They bounce back pretty quickly and pretty ferociously.
Yeah.
So,
yes. Yeah. Yep. Sorry, Eagle fans, but it's not going to be good for you tomorrow. But anyway,
don't think
so let's just jump right in. We've got some great questions in the queue, and I'm going to bring up the first one from Coleman, and I don't know if Coleman's going to like our answer, but it is a touch of reality. But Coleman says, Vince and Brian, have both of you given much thought to covering men's basketball more? I know they suck right now, but diehard basketball fans like myself would be excited.
Well, at the end of the day, it's my decision, and we have talked about this a lot and looked into it a lot. And we've tried it multiple times.
Yes, we have,
including last year when they were good. And at the end of the day, this is a business, and part of the business decision is we have to spend our time properly, and we have a limited number of resources from a people that can produce content standpoint. And we're going to always cover football because that's who we are. It's what we do. Right. When it comes to covering the other sports, it's like, okay, well, let's work with certain institutions or certain parts of the program that we think, number one, that we want to cover. And so that's what we started doing men's basketball, because I enjoy men's basketball very much. Want to support the team. To be honest with you, the first year we were doing it was just basically just me and Vince, and it was really just me when it came to covering basketball, because as far as going to games, because Vince couldn't, and because of other obligations. And so I signed up for a season credential, and I couldn't make some games, so let them know, and all these other things going on. And then eventually it was just they pretty much said, hey, if you can't come to every game, then can't come. So, okay, sure, then I won't come. And they just made it very difficult to cover the team and not really fun to cover the team, to be honest with you. So it's like, with all due respect, you guys should be begging me to cover your basketball team.
Especially now.
And this was the year before when they were okay, but not as great.
Yeah,
and
they weren't great.
COVID hit and all that other stuff. But we've tried the last 2 years to cover the team. And the reality is it just nobody pays attention. We've had Tom Noy on our show several times, and Tom is so good. And he provides great insight and all that. And then it's always one of the lowest numbers we'll have on a podcast is when Tom Noy's on it. And it's not because of Tom. It's because we say, hey, we're going to talk men's basketball tonight. Nobody cares. The reality is the only other sport that we've covered that's gotten any traction at all, when it's not like the College World Series, we got traction for that, but is women's basketball.
Yeah.
And so, and to, we obviously have the in with Sean, so that makes it easier to cover it. But look, I have to make business decisions, and I have to pay people for the work that they do. And if I start paying people to cover the men's basketball team, I'm going to lose money. And if I start losing money, then I start losing employees, and we're back to where it was at the beginning, which is the website's basically just me. And then the podcast is me and Vince. So we're not going to cover the men's basketball team. I am curious what kind of energy might be created by a new coach. Because I think as much as a lot of Notre Dame fans loved Mike Brey for a long time and still to this day respect the job he did, at the end of the day, it just had gotten stale.
Yep.
It was a lot like at the end of the Brian Kelly era where people were just like, this is who we are and this is where we're going to be. And, and obviously Brian Kelly had more success end of his career than Mike Brey did, but it's just kind of like, this is your lot in life and you accept it.
Yeah.
And so nobody really watches the article, reads the articles, or watches a show about men's basketball. I'll write an article about the women's, the two girls on the basketball team, the two signees that are in the McDonald's All-American game. There'll be one of the most read articles that we'll have that.
Crazy.
Like when Olivia Miles committed and then Sonia Citron committed to Notre Dame for 2 days in a row, that was the number one read story that we had. The JJ Starling committing, again, 5-star guard, never reached the top 5. So it's a business decision.
And the proof's in the numbers. I mean, it's right there in black and white and, easy for us to see what people want to hear.
We'll probably give it another whirl when it comes to when they make a new hire. But as of right now, and hopefully our staff is bigger by then. Yeah. But as of right now, it's just not really a doable thing at this point in time.
Agreed. Okay, Anthony Solomon says, do you see Ziegler in year 2 playing more full-time special teams, or will he play special teams and linebacker?
Well, I'm hoping he does both.
Sure.
Look, I think Notre Dame needs an influx in depth and length and speed at linebacker. I'm not someone who thinks the linebackers are slow by any stretch. I think they're good athletes, but I think the lack of length at some spots, and then with Maris, it's just execution problems.
Yeah, right.
But there's no reason not to be playing the sophomore class of linebacker this year. Whether they start or not, they need to play. And then, of course, they need to be doing more on special teams. Absolutely. I'm fine with Notre Dame redshirting Nolan Ziegler. I think he's one of the few guys that's a 5-year guy. Potentially a 5-year guy. So I had no problem with the redshirting. But if he's not a full-time guy this year, then I'm going to seriously question kind of what's going on. And we have some more special teams questions that I'll hold off on getting my answer any further until we get to that question, Vince.
Okay, very good. I like that. I will ask another business-related question here because we were kind of in that vein, right? Irish Chi-Town once says, Brian, is Lucky Lefty now affiliated with Irish Breakdown?
It is, yes. So Lucky Lefty's podcast is still its own entity. But what we did is we've partnered with Lucky Lefty to where now we are hosting their podcast on our CFB Nation platform. The ultimate goal eventually is once CFB Nation is really where I want it to be, we'll have our national shows and all that, but we also want to sign some team-oriented talent and people that want to cover specific teams and have those on our podcast. So basically any college football fan of any team is going to have a desire or need to go to CFB Nation. Well, I couldn't do that and then not have a Notre Dame channel be the first one that we signed. And so I said, well, who do I want to have as far as the Notre Dame talent that's going to cover Notre Dame on that channel? And of course we still have our Irish Breakdown team because I didn't want Irish Breakdown to be the Notre Dame because that just makes no sense.
Right.
And it made total sense to bring on Lucky Lefty podcast because they do things differently than we do. And I felt like we have a relationship already, obviously with Sean Davis being a part of the Irish Breakdown team as well. From a recruiting standpoint, he's on our shows so much that it was a no-brainer, really.
Yeah.
And I mean, I thought for like maybe 2 seconds about a couple other potential people, but it was just like, no, I'm going to go see if we can work some out with Lucky Lefty. And we were able to get a deal struck. And so now they are the Notre Dame channel on the CFB Nation podcast. So it affects the podcast side. It doesn't really affect the YouTube side. The YouTube side is they're still their own entity, but now their show you can find their show on the CFB Nation podcast app. So if you like listening to their show, but you don't want to listen to it on YouTube, you can definitely check it out on the CFB Nation app.
Beautiful. All right. I want to get that out of the way because that was a really fun move
Yes.
for Irish Breakdown, for Lucky Lefty, and the whole thing, just kind of bringing them into the umbrella and bringing them into the family. So
and they
it's
have
good.
that whole, we spin it different thing, and that made sense. I didn't want to bring in a show that's just like ours.
Sure.
I didn't want to bring in a
They
show
approach
that
it differently. Yeah.
yeah, they approach it differently. They talk about, they'll talk about same topics in different ways. It has a different vibe to it. There's just a lot of different things to how they do it, and there's also a lot of carryover with how they do it in the way that they do things. So at the heart of it, there had to be, you need to kind of stick to football for the most part. The second part of it is like, I need intellectual honesty. All right, that needed to be a thing. You want to stay away from the clickbaity type of stuff, and then you wanted someone who was willing to call a spade, so to speak. If you don't think something's going well, be willing to speak to that. And we're not, Pollyannas and homers and all that other kind of stuff. And Lucky Lefty certainly does that. But the way that they go about it, the presentation, the way that they go about topics, they do a lot more interviewing former players than we do. There just was a lot of uniqueness to it that brought enough to me, diversity in style, diversity in content, that made a lot of sense to pair with Irish Breakdown, that I thought added to our package. And so, like, somebody emailed me like, hey, why don't you do more player interviews? And I'm like, well, I haven't responded to that person yet. I need to. Been so busy the last few days. It's kind of like, well, that's what Lucky Lefty does. And we'll do some of that in the IB Nation Sports Talk Show. We do some of that. But I'm not trying to be like somebody else's podcast. I don't want to be like, I don't even start naming names, but like, so-and-so's interviewing former players. Well, good for him. I'm sure they were great shows, but like, that's not who we are.
Right.
I'm not trying to be like somebody else. And so, but we still have that. There's still merit to that. And that's why we started the IB Nation Sports Talk Show. And Sean's going to be doing a lot more of that once basketball's over.
Yes, he is.
And different things along those lines. But, instead of trying to incorporate what others may do or what other ideas into our show, we're going to keep our show the same and then just add different types around it. Yeah. And that's the best way to do it, is instead of making our one show like everybody else's, we're just going to do a little bit of everything in different formats and different hosts and things like that.
If player interviews is what you're looking for, well, I think we're going to have some good ones. Sean and I have been doing some talking, and, I think we're going to have some good stuff on here. If that's what you're looking for, well, other good stuff as well.
Right. And some people like that. Some people don't. And that's the whole reason we're trying to grow Irish Breakdown the way that we are, instead of me and Ryan added a second show, or me and Vince adding a second show. Like, let's go get Sean Stiers, who's going to do things completely differently and bring his own flair, and just all that's different. And people say, well, somebody said to me once, like, that's not really a typical Irish Breakdown show. And I was like, yeah, exactly.
That's the point.
Right. Like, I want different. And of course we have the Lucky Lefty crew that they also will bring in former players and do that. So we'll have plenty of that under the umbrella. Right. And that's the whole point, is, eventually I want to kind of have it where it's almost like you get up in the morning and then you go to bed at night. There's going to be an Irish Breakdown show at some point in time that you're going to have a chance to listen to. Right. And we'll be able to kind of make sure we're touching on everybody's desired flavors, so to speak.
There you go. All right, little prognostication here from Anthony. Says, what is your feeling on how the starting guard positions will shake out?
Well, it's interesting. We talked a lot about that, Vince, today on our show.
I thought you might have, yeah.
Obviously Andrew Kristofic goes into the spring, I would imagine, as sort of the leader in the clubhouse at one of those positions. He started, 7 games in 2021, and really helped him and Joe Alt stepping in the lineup about the same time, really helped solidify that line and kind of calm it down.
Agreed.
And bring a level of consistency to it. In 2021, he got beat out this spring just because of how good Zeke Carell was. And he was kind of behind a pretty good bunch of group of offensive linemen. And the thing is, Andrew still has 2 years left after this because of the COVID year. He still has the 6th year possibility. So he, to me, is the leader in the clubhouse, but he's going to be in a battle. You're going to have Billy Shrouth competing for one of those jobs. You're going to have Rocco Spindler competing for one of those jobs, potentially Ty Chan, in my opinion, competing for one of those jobs. You could maybe see an Ashton Craig be a sleeper, although I still think they like him at center. Maybe it's Charles Jagasaw when he gets there in the fall. Sam Pendleton's an early enrollee. There's a lot of options at guard. Yeah. So right now, if I was a betting man right now, I'd probably put a nickel on it being Andrew Kristofic and Billy Shrouth.
Yes, those are my two.
Where I'd probably go right now. But I'm not counting out Ty Chan. I'm not counting out, even potentially Michael Carmody if he can have a good offseason. There's a lot of options. And we'll see who dukes it out. Whoever starts is going to have to win the job. And I don't mean that he's going to have to play well. It's not so much like we don't really have anybody. I guess we're going to have to play that guy. Whoever's going to start at guard is going to have played well because there's a lot of good players in that conversation.
Completely agree. And that's the exciting part about the guard position at Notre Dame right now is that whoever wins that job is going to have to beat out some really, really good talent. And so that 2 deep at guard, I think, is going to be really, really good. So,
Absolutely.
how that shakes out. I mean, if you're asking us to go 2 deep, that's even a little bit more complicated, in my opinion, because you just don't know who's going to be in that fight by the end of the spring. And then will it even be settled by the end of the spring? I don't know the answer to that. It might carry over into the fall, just like you said, with Jagasaw coming in. He's not even going to be a part of it in the spring. So he's going to come in the fall. Is he going to be able to shake some things up, move into the 2 deep, potentially? So it's going to be very interesting to see how guard shakes out. I like the fact that there are multiple options right now and that it's not we got 2 guys. Congratulations, you're it. Like, that's a good place for Notre Dame to be. And look, I got a lot of faith in Harry Hiestand. He's going to find the 2 best guys, and those 2 guys are going to play, and they're going to excel, and it's going to be good. So that is going to be a fun battle to watch at the end of the day. So, all right. Tyler wants to know, how would you utilize Jadarian Price to complement the 3 backs that we saw in 2022?
Well, the first thing is if they use Chris Tyree effectively and properly, the first thing I would do, Vince, is I'd have Jadarian Price, if he's healthy, would be my kick returner. That's the first thing, Vince, that I would do. I want to hear your thoughts on that.
No, I love that idea because they need to get Chris Tyree more involved in the offense. And if that's going to be the case, then having him not as a returner, I think is a good place for him to be. You know what I mean? They need to be, number one, Notre Dame needs to be in more 2-back sets. And of those 2-back sets, Chris Tyree needs to be that second back more often than not because he brings that different element to the offense that they should be looking for, right? Moving him around, putting him in motion, however you want to do it, he needs to be that second back. And so if you're going to do that, well, take the burden of being a kick returner off of his shoulders and let Jadarian Price be that guy because he could be very effective back there as a kick returner as well.
As far as the running back aspect of it, Vince, it's hard to play 4 running backs. I mean, 3 is a challenge.
Yeah.
And it can be done with the right group, but 3 is a challenge. 4 is just not possible as far as the regular rotation. What I think you could do is there's going to be some games this year where Notre Dame's going to have a chance to have some blowouts. And they need to have those blowouts, right? I'm sorry. With all due respect, Navy needs to be a blowout. With all due respect, Tennessee State, Central Michigan need to be blowouts. And then there's going to be a couple other games that maybe you don't predict it's going to be a blowout, but did I think that Notre Dame was going to beat Pitt 45-3 in 2020 when they had that pretty good offense? No, I didn't think so. But you had a blocked punt, you had a couple of big plays. Next thing you know, a 14-3 competitive games, 20-3 like that.
Right.
You had the Bo Bauer pick, you had the Jeremiah Usukumoa pick, you had the block kick, and all of a sudden a competitive game is just out of control. And there's going to be a game or 2 like that, right? I didn't think Boston College was going to be 44-0. I mean, they had just coming off of a road win, and they weren't very good, but they were just coming off of a road win over a really good NC State team. And Notre Dame was coming off a game against Navy that they almost blew a big lead in the second half. This is how it goes sometimes. So the thing is, when those games happen, get Jadarian in there as early as possible.
Yeah.
Would be my thing. But that's why I like the idea of if Chris Tyree is being used correctly, you don't have to have him back there returning kicks. And you can put Jadarian back there and give him a chance to do it.
Yeah.
Because they may be more prone to try and kick to him than they were Chris Tyree. Because very few people tried to kick to Chris Tyree this year.
Right.
They had Wisconsin flashbacks in their head.
I was hoping to have Wisconsin reruns, but we never really had a chance to see that, unfortunately. So, all right, let's jump into a little bit of recruiting. We got a couple of recruiting questions we can get to here from Coleman. He says over under 10 commits by the end of spring ball. Like 10 total or 10 more?
Total. I think he's total. Okay. I would say over.
Right. Where are they at now?
7.
6 or 7? Okay.
I think they'll add another one here very soon.
Okay.
So then it'd get down to 2 by the end of spring. So that's end of April 22nd. I think they'll be at 10. I think they'll definitely be at the very minimum at 10, probably over would be my guess. Now, they're not pushing for guys to commit like they were last year because it's going to be a smaller class.
Right.
So they're allowing the process to play out as they shape the board at a couple positions. But yeah, they're going to they'll be at the very least at 10. But if I had to predict now, I definitely would say over on that.
Okay. I like that. Anthony wants to know what your feelings are on the absurd 247 final rankings. I think Notre Dame had 2 players in the top 100. I'm ready for the IB unbiased rankings show.
Well, we won't be doing an IB show. We'll be doing it on CFP Nation. So we'll be doing it on that channel as far as like the rankings for everybody. But I'll say this on this show, what I said on the other show. If you're going to tell me that rankings are absurd and they're bad, you've got to be able to tell me that they're absurd and bad beyond just the Notre Dame rankings.
Sure.
Because if the only thing you got, you'd have to tell me that the only school that they're biased towards is Notre Dame. And there may be some truth to that, especially with certain networks. Like Rivals has a couple people there that I believe are anti-Notre Dame, but not everybody there is anti-Notre Dame.
Right.
I think 24/7 Sports just sucks at it. I do think that there's someone that's a higher up in the 247 rankings process that's very anti-Notre Dame. But there'd be enough people to kind of trump him to get a couple guys in there. I just don't think they're good at this. And I think that's number one. I think the other part is that it's all about driving engagement. And engagement's the thing now. It's not the whole integrity of doing the job the best you can, clicks be damned, is not a thing. It's they may say it, but they got a business to run. They have and their business model is built on clicks.
Mm-hmm.
And ours is not as driven by that or driven by that at all. And so that's just the reality of it. But the thing with 247 is it wasn't just Notre Dame rankings that I found absurd. I mean, having Jackson Arnold at number 8, I wouldn't even have him as the number 8 quarterback, much less as the number 8 player in the country. David Hicks is a guy that I like a lot. 7's way too high. Jadarian Dickey at 21's way too high. Just going through some of these other ones a little bit. There were some other guys that I thought were way too low on this one. Like, let me just kind of go down through this, Vince, because I had gone through this the other day and just kind of pointed out some of the absurdity of some of these rankings. But you had some guys like Chase Basantis is a top 50 player. He's not even top 200 player on my board. And that's evidenced by, to me, you want support for why that's accurate. Because actually, that's the composite. So he was not that high on them. I'm sorry. It's even let me find it here. So they had Jackson Arnold at 10. Ooh, okay, big difference. So that's Jadarian Dickey at 18. That's a little nuts in my opinion. I don't see that one. Deshaun Womack's a little overrated at 26. The Pierre kid that's going to Alabama, he jumped way up because of an all-star game. I mean, I just if you're moving a kid up or down because of an all-star game, I have a problem with that whole process.
That's lazy.
It's very lazy. They had Charles Jagus on the top 50. That's where he should be. Let me find a couple more here. I'm going to go down to some of these lower ones and just find some of the ones that I just thought were nuts, even taking the Notre Dame aspect out of it. They had Chase Basantis at 72. Again, not a top 200 player. They have Chase Basantis over Jason Moore. They had Jason Moore all the way down to 74. That's way too low for Jason Moore, in my opinion. If you have him outside the top 50, I don't think you're doing this thing right. Let's get to a few more of these. I mean, there's a lot of these that I could point to, and I went through this the other day. Here's some guys they had outside of the top 100 that I just thought was I'm very curious. They dropped Tyler Williams at 110. Have you seen him, Vince, the receiver going to Georgia? He should absolutely be in the top, way inside the top 100, in my opinion. He's got a ton of talent. Luke Montgomery's way overrated, but everybody way overrates Luke Montgomery. I got Blake Purchase too high. Let's see here. Olaus Alanin, if that kid, the kid from Connecticut, if Olaus Alanin was going anywhere but Bama, he'd be ranked much lower. Mm-hmm. They have Shelton Sampson, this receiver going to LSU, ranked 139th. I have that kid as a 5-star. So I think that one's way off as well. So if I'm going to tell you that you're jacking up the rankings with a kid from LSU, then you know that I think you're jacking up the rankings because I have no desire to hype him up. Any way, shape, form, or fashion. So anyway, just the moral of the story is I just don't think they're good at rankings. And I think they take way too many things into consideration that are more about clicks and storylines and all that other nonsense and relationships. And I know this coach, I know that coach. I want to keep this coach happy. I want to keep that coach happy. I want to make sure this kid's talking to me and all these other. They just put so much of that stuff in the rankings that it just makes their rankings pretty much useless to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why here's my thing though. If you think they're absurd, stop watching them, stop reading them. That's why I say, look, because us talking about it right now, this is what they want. Because they want everybody here going to click on to see how absurd their rankings are. Yep. And guess what? They're making money.
It's clickbait.
That's right.
Yep.
And we fall for it every time.
Yep.
Every time.
All right. I think this is probably the special teams question you were looking for. So let's jump right in, Brian. Lucas says, do you think Notre Dame playing a lot of their starters on special teams takes away opportunities of those not starting or on the 2 deep to see the field, gain confidence, and make their presence known? This is a good question.
It does. Yes, it absolutely does. But it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. And here's my point on that, Vince. If it's close, I'm playing the younger guy.
Sure.
Because I want to give him the opportunity to get on the field, have some of those moments. But if it's not close, I'm playing my starter. Mm-hmm. Because look how much special teams impacted Notre Dame winning and losing games this year.
Yeah, big time.
And so if you're gonna give me this whole, well, special teams is every bit as important as offense and defense, and then be unwilling to play your starters on there, then you don't really mean that. You're just giving lip service to it.
Yeah.
And so for Notre Dame, it's not lip service. The reason that Jordan Patelho is on special teams, all those special teams, is not because they want to get him snaps. It's because he's one of the best 11 on that unit. Same with Prince Colley. It's not, well, let's find a chance to get Prince some snaps, since he's not playing linebacker. It's like, no, Prince Colley's really good at that special teams role that he has. Right. Now, some players don't embrace that. Some players are still pissed off that they didn't play more at this position they're supposed to play, even though they were like full-time stars on special teams. It's just the way that it is. I mean, hey, let's ignore the fact that David Bruton was like a borderline Hall of Fame player as a special teamer in the NFL. I'm being a little hyperbolic about the Hall of Fame part, but David Bruton was in the NFL for over a decade.
Yeah,
because of his special teams, and that is it. So look, I mean, that's an important aspect to it. Like I said, if a guy is significantly better, play that guy. If it's close, I want to get the younger guy on the field. There's no question about it. And in some instances, I would give a younger guy more of a chance to win a spot, to be honest with you. But that's where it's going to be.
Okay. I like that. I think that's a really good point. If it's close, go with the younger guy. Give your starter a blow. I have no problem with that. But if this guy's just head and shoulders above, I mean, Chase Claypool playing, as a gunner, it's just an example. Like, he didn't want to come off the field. He wanted to do that, and he was really, really good at it. You take him off the field, your gunners aren't as good. I mean, bottom line, right? So, yeah, if you've got a kid that's pushing for a spot, you give it to him. But, man, special teams is so important. We saw it last year, like you said. And, we can all agree that Brian Mason is a good coach. But we can also all agree that having good players can help make you a good coach. And since he was able to dive into starters and really good players, he was able to maximize their ability on his special teams to make his special teams even that much more, that much better. I mean, Isaiah Foskey had blocks, pump blocks. Does whoever you put in his spot that's not a starter have that same effect? I'm going to say no. I mean, maybe, but
if not, you're doing an injustice to your team by not playing him.
Exactly.
Or by playing that guy.
Yes.
100%. And not playing Foskey. Right.
Yep. So, all right. First of all, Anthony shooting us with a super
Those are
chat,
called super chats.
Yeah. I was like, oh my God, I can't remember the name. What is wrong with me? But that's a super chat from Anthony. Thank you very much. Anthony says, thanks for the OG holding down the show, referring to this guy over here. So appreciate that very much, Anthony.
I think he was referring to the OGs. I think he meant that plural.
And I'll take that. I will take that as well. So thank you very much, Anthony. Much appreciated. Irish Chi-Town. Brian and Vince, who are your 5 top players that you're most excited to see in 2023?
Well, I get excited about seeing guys we either haven't seen before or guys we haven't seen a lot of. So, I'm not excited to see Joe Alt again. I'm looking forward to watching him dominate again, but it doesn't excite me, that kind of thing. I wouldn't even throw Sam Hartman into that conversation because it's more about like I'm curious, but I'm not like
Sure.
excited. What excites me is like I want to see Tobias Merriweather maybe break out this year. I want to see, kind of which defensive lineman breaks out. Like I'm really looking forward to seeing like what Josh Burnham does this spring and seeing what kind of player he can be. I'm really looking forward to watching some of the young linebackers kind of really take that next step. A guy that we talked about, one of the guys I'm excited to see this spring, and I'm not even to 2023 fall yet, Irish Town. So right now I'm on the spring. Like I can't focus on the season as much until we see the spring. But I talked about Billy Schrouth. I'm really excited to see Billy Schrouth this spring and see what he's made of and what he's capable of.
We've heard so many good things.
Yes,
but I want to see it with my own eyes.
Yeah. We talked about earlier in the week. I'm really excited to see Chance Tucker. I'm really hoping that him or Ryan Barnes can really emerge as legit players this spring, which then maybe can allow the Notre Dame coaching staff to move Clarence Lewis to safety, where I think he could be a really good player.
Yeah.
So it's usually, Tyson Ford. I'm really looking forward to see Tyson. So do I have a 5? I'd probably go Tobias Merriweather. I'd go Billy Schrouth. I'd go Nolan Ziegler. I'd go Chance Tucker / Ryan Barnes. That's a duo that's going to take up one spot. And then pick a sophomore defensive lineman, and you can use him there. Whether it's Burnham or Tyson Ford or Aiden Gobira or Junior or Domin Heinisch. Pick one of those guys, and I'm looking forward to seeing one of those guys. See which one of those guys can really break out this spring. If I had to pick a veteran on the offense and defense, I don't know if I'd say excited, but I'm anxious to. I guess I'm kind of excited to see if Mitchell Evans can make the jump. I think he's capable of making in year 2. He'd be one on offense, and then on defense, Vincent Riley Mills.
Okay.
And part of it's excitement, but part of it's maybe not excitement is the word, but maybe curious to see if he can become the dude up front, because that's going to be a big thing. Somebody's got to become the dude up front, because you're 2 dudes left, and so who's going to become that dude with Foskey and Adamiola gone? Is it going to be Riley Mills? Hope so, but we'll see. People say, "Are you excited to see?" But I'm not excited to see what Battelle can do. I just excited to see that he's there every day and hasn't done something to not be there anymore. That's all I care about. Because if he's there, he'll be fine. He'll be good.
Agreed. So the way I took this question is, when I walk onto that first practice in spring, or the first full practice we get to see, who am I going to be watching? Like, where's my attention outside of where you assign me to go watch?
I know the first one.
Where's my attention going to go?
I know the first one.
Sam Hartman is my number one. I'm sorry. That's who I'm excited to see. I want to see, obviously, if what he did at Wake Forest translates to Notre Dame, and if he's able to elevate the guys around him, and we're going to get a taste of that in the spring. We're not going to get a full taste until the fall and there's actual games. But yeah, Sam Hartman's the number one on my list. I'll quickly go through. I want to see if Ben Morrison, what does his next step look like, to be honest with you, because now there's a lot of film on Ben Morrison, right? And what our defense is going to do to him. So that's more of a fall thing, I think, than maybe even the spring. But
that's more of a when's the first game?
Yeah.
Okay, don't care about Navy. Okay, so when's the next real game?
Yeah.
Okay, NC State. Whenever NC State game comes up, that's when I care about when Benjamin Morrison is going to be.
So I'm excited to see him. I'm excited to see Billy Schrouth. I had him on my list as
well.
Can
I just say something? Wasn't it hilarious that Notre Dame made this decision, this schematic decision not to play Benjamin Morrison early against Navy, and then they finally put him in the game, and he starts making plays. It's just like, you guys overthought that one a little bit too much.
A little bit. I love it when they overthink Navy, by the way. Just putting that out there.
Exactly.
Xavier Watts and Tobias Merriweather. Those are my other
Xavier
two.
One.
I am ready for him to just take off. Really just put a stranglehold on that starting position. And look, he's the starting safety. Let's see what you got, man. I want to see his leadership. I want to see his just everything.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. I almost kind of take him for granted a little bit, Vince.
I know, right?
But you're right. You're right. I got to pull this one up from Salty Virginia Peanuts.
Yeah.
Oh no, here we go. Because he's obviously Jane Greathouse is the guy he's looking for.
Oh, I know, the great one.
And then there's this one. Don't lie, Vince. It will be cheerleaders practice. Hey, look, I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna have to be keeping Vince under control. If Sam Hartman comes out there and he's dealing and Tyler Buckner is dealing, and those two quarterbacks are dealing early in practice, I'm going to have to be like, Vince, you cannot cheer. I'm going to have to ask you to leave if you don't cheer. You're making me look bad.
Like, let's go!
Because he's going to be so fired up. He's going to be trying to look around, high-fiving somebody. And we're like, hey, chill, man, chill.
Dude, come on, man.
But he's going to be super fired up. Yeah, no doubt.
Oh, man. I'm hoping we get a little more access this spring than we did last spring, but we'll see what happens.
2 practices is more access for me. So,
that's
but
fair.
Yeah, for all of us. Yeah,
that's a good point.
So.
I'll put it this way. I hope they're also on Saturdays as opposed to during the day.
They won't be. That's too convenient.
I know. A guy can dream, though, right?
I have a feeling they're going to continue to cut our access back. Just knowing who I believe is in charge of making that decision, Vince, and I think you know who I'm talking about.
I do.
They're definitely going to limit our access because,
I do.
I do.
It's
I'll be shocked if they give us more access this spring.
And
shocked.
We're going to get more like awkward practice reports from the first 20 minutes of practice. Like that's what what so-and-so looked great in the stretch line again. Woo!
Well, look how good he was going through routes on air. He's going to be a star this year.
He's going to be a stud. Look out.
Okay.
All right. Anyway, hey, we're going to jump to basketball real quick. Coleman says, what are your thoughts on Mike Brey being involved in the process of hiring the new coach? We talked about this a little bit last week when this first went down because he mentioned it in his in his press conference announcing his retirement that he's going to be involved or he's going to have a say or he's willing or whatever he said. So we talked about it. I'm interested to hear what you have to say about that.
Mike Krzyzewski has earned the right to be a part of finding his replacement.
Correct.
Dean Smith had earned the right to have a say in who's going to be his replacement. With all due respect to Coach Brey, who's done a lot of good things in Notre Dame, he should have no say on who's going to replace him. There's no way he can possibly be objective about this.
Right.
Because some of his former players are going to be up for the job. There's no way he's going to be able to say, no, don't pick, this former player, Chris Quinn or Martin Inglesby or whoever else. Don't pick them. Pick this other guy that I don't know, right? Who's got a way better resume and would be better fit for that. There's no way he can be objective about that. So if they want to have him be like a token part of the conversation, fine. But he should have no say on
the
when
final decision,
or even who the finalist should be.
Right.
I mean, no. Now, yes, no. I'm sorry. There's very few coaches that have earned the right to be able to handpick their replacement or have any say in their replacement. And Coach Brey is just not one of those guys. I mean, there should be a big giant ring that has the word national and then championship here. That should be part of your resume if you're going to have claim to that.
Yep. And that's basically exactly what I said. If I'm Jack Swarbrick, I'll show him the respect. Be like, hey, who do you think we should talk to? You can give me whatever list. Doesn't mean I'm going to do it, but you can give me whatever list you want. I'll go, maybe I'll go talk to those guys. Maybe I won't, whatever.
Sure.
I will at least go have that conversation, but that's where it ends. Like that decision is Jack's, and whoever Jack decides needs to be on that committee or however it's going to work. It's not Mike's. Like, it's just not. So yeah, I agree with you completely.
Plus, I mean, he's shown that he doesn't quite know what to do to get a team to be successful in this current makeup of college basketball.
Correct. Agreed.
Otherwise, he'd have done it himself.
Right. Call Me Ty has a very interesting question here. Brian says, what position group do you think changes the most top to bottom from week 0 to week 12?
That's a good one.
That's a really good one.
If I had to guess, it would be defensive line.
Okay.
Because I think early on in week 0 against Navy, you're going to see a lot of veterans and I see Nana and guys like that, and that's fine. They're good players, but I have a feeling by the end of the year, we're going to see a lot more of the young guys out there balling and making plays. That's mine.
Okay. I know this is what everybody wants me to say, but I could definitely see it potentially being the case. That would be linebacker, potentially.
I just have no confidence that literally Maris can't be any worse than he was this year. I mean, literally can't play worse than that.
Agreed.
And yet they still kept trotting him out. You had a whole month to prepare for bowl game. I know Nolan Ziegler and Jalen Steen both got a ton of reps before the bowl game. And how many reps did Nolan Ziegler get in the game? 0. Yeah. While Maris is out there ripping face masks off, getting penalties, being out of position. And it's just like I have no faith that Al Golden's going to make the necessary changes. I hope you're right. But here's the thing. I hope if it doesn't happen by week 1, Vince, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's
if the first 2 games they trot out the same guys, and I just don't see it's not going to change.
And you might see you and having Navy be your first game is a little bit deceiving as well, because I don't think you might not see your
but Harris was
normal.
terrible against Navy last year.
I know.
So, like,
I'm
why
aware.
would we need to see him in that game?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
exactly. And if he doesn't play against Navy, it's not going to be that he's never going to play, because he could very well start the very next week.
Right.
Is what I'm saying.
Good point.
We'll see, but you never know. Maybe there's a youth movement halfway through the season, but I'm not holding my breath based on
it when I'll believe it when I see it.
Exactly correct. All right, DJ was out. He's in for 2 today. He was watching your previous show. He says, Brian, on today's show, talking about O-line, you mentioned some of the freshmen and 2-year guys. What about some of the other guys buried on the depth chart? Hearing anybody making strides?
There aren't a lot of guys like that.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is because they had that two-man class in 2020 of Tosh Baker and Michael Carmody, right?
Bad.
And then the 2019, that was the 2019 class is Zeke and Kristofic, and that's it, right? The 2018 class is gone. And then the 2022 class, or the 2021 class, I mean, we talked about Blake Fisher, we talked about Rocco. I don't see Caleb Johnson being a guy that moves the needle. I don't see Pat Coogan being that guy, just in my opinion. And then who's the 5th guy? Oh, Joe Alt's the other guy from that group. So who else would it be besides the freshmen and the year 2 guys? I mean, there's not a lot of other options. And so I don't really see anybody. And then, we could talk about Tosh Baker, who I was told by several sources had a really good year last year, really developed, really learned a lot under Coach Eastham, but he's buried behind 2 future top 15 NFL draft picks at tackle right now. So, hopefully Tosh sticks it out for 1 more year with knowing that, hey, there's a pretty decent chance that Joe Alt's going to be in the top 10 of the NFL draft next year. And then Tosh would then have a chance to have 2 more years to start after that.
Yeah.
So, hopefully that's the case. We'll see.
All right, we're picking your history mind here. Gavin says, if you could add 1 offensive and 1 defensive player from Notre Dame's history to this year's team to make this a title team, who are you taking? He says, for me, it's Rocket and the honorable Alan Page.
So the way I handle all these, Vince, I never pick guys I never saw play.
Right.
So, like, I never saw Joe Montana play at Notre Dame. I never saw Alan Page play. I didn't even see Alan Page. I wouldn't even know enough to see Alan Page play in the NFL.
I know, right?
So I can't pick. I can only pick guys that I've seen play, and it's a no-brainer for Rocket. Now, look, Jerome Bettis, Reggie Brooks. There's been some great players, but like that makes a strength an even stronger area. Like I want to take somebody that's going to make an area that's not elite, and because I could say Zach Martin, I could say Quentin Nelson, but the offensive line I expect to already be good.
Sure.
Love Tony Rice, but he's not a modern player. I mean, Ricky Waters is a guy you could think of. But again, running back's already still pretty good. Rocket changes the game on the perimeter of your offense in a way that nobody else could. And so he'd be one. Sam Hartman would have 6 touchdowns this year on throws that he threw behind the line of scrimmage at least to Rocket. And then defensively, if I'm talking about, guys that I have seen, oh man, like there's Jalen Smith, a healthy Jalen Smith on this defense would be pretty nasty. Like think of you could go Harrison Smith at safety. That'd be a good one. You could go Justin Tuck at defensive end. That's my other option. I think Justin Tuck is a pass rusher. Like think of a better version of Isaiah Foskey.
Yeah.
But it's hard not to go with a healthy Jalen Smith.
Like a Bryant Young or a Chris Zorich, like somebody in the middle, like the defensive line.
Right, Bryant Young would be a good one. Yeah, that'd be because I think Chris Zorich would have a little tougher time.
Because he's smaller.
In today's era. I mean, he's like, what was Chris Zorch's size at Notre Dame? I don't think it was very big.
He'd be undersized in today's world.
I mean, he was 6'1", 282 is what he was listed as in the pros. He was like 260, 270. I mean, he's Howard Cross's size. Sure. Now, he'd be a great player, but I just would rather take the 6'3", 300-pound guy in Bryant Young.
Yep.
But just Jalen Smith is in the modern day. Look, if you have a linebacker that can move like Jalen Smith in today's game, I mean, you're going to be
coached properly in a proper defense.
Well, that's not necessarily given. But significantly better than the guy that coached him.
Yes.
That's for sure.
Yes.
That's for sure.
Absolutely. Hey, we got another super chat from Brock. Thank you
Brock.
very much, Brock. says, do you think that JD Price can be a starter / elite runner this year from what we've seen and heard?
No, well, could he be? Yes, he can. Will he be? I don't think so. JD had a chance last year to become that guy.
Yeah.
From what I've been told by multiple sources, JD was their best running back in the spring. However, his injury opened up the door for Audric and Logan to kind of step in and say, hey, we're here.
Yeah.
And so that gap is widened now.
Yes.
And you're also talking about a guy that's coming back from an Achilles injury. I don't want to push him to become the guy in year one, because if you hurt it again, he's done. He'll never be the same guy. So you got a year of eligibility with him, like, just work him back slowly, find a role for him. I think it's going to be very hard for him to have missed all last year. Let Audric and Logan combine for over 1,700 yards and 14, 15 touchdowns, just rushing alone. It's going to be hard, as good as he is, to then come back from an injury and beat those guys out. I don't see it. I just don't see it.
All right, I'm going to ask a follow-up question, and this is going to be prognosticating into the future, obviously. But if Logan Diggs and Audric Estime and Chris Tyree, for that matter, they take the step that you envision that they could and should take going into this year, right? All three of them gone, 2 gone, 1 gone, especially with the talent that's going to be in the room moving forward. How do you see the future of this room looking? Because it's obviously crowded going into the 23 season.
I think 2 of the 3 are gone after next year.
Okay.
I think one of the 2, potentially all 3. I think there's a greater chance that all 3 of them are gone than 2 of them come back.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
I think at best one of them comes back. I think one of the sophomores will go pro, and then I think Chris Tyree leaves, whether that's to also go pro or to go somewhere as a 5th-year guy.
Yeah.
Right, and be the guy. If Chris Tyree is used correctly, I could see him going pro.
Sure. Because
he's going to have, decent amount of production. He'll probably have 1,000 career rushing yards by then. He'll make a lot of plays in the pass game. He'll have shown he can return kicks. What else would he have to prove somewhere else? He's not a lead back. He's not a 20. We've never said that. He's not a 20-touch guy, and no one's going to give him that opportunity, and it works. So I could see him leaving as well with a Notre Dame degree in hand. So I could see near all 3. And in that case, okay, best of luck, fellas. Y'all did great. And hey, Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love and Jabron Payne, it's your turn now.
Correct.
And then, Aneesa Williams will be stepping in as a true freshman then, who maybe they'll get another back. But, as long as Jadarian Price is healthy, if you're going into 2024 with a junior Jadarian Price and a sophomore Jeremiah Love at running back and Jabron Payne as your number 3, okay, I'm going to feel just as good as that backfield as I do about the one they got now, as far as your trio. So I think the future at running back looks incredibly bright.
Oh, absolutely. And if things go the way Notre Dame fans, hope that they go, then all 3 of those guys are going to have productive seasons. And at the running back position, I mean, we've talked about this a little bit. At the running back position, you've kind of got like X amount of carries in your lifetime as a running back, right? And it just feels like the ceiling for running backs as far as longevity in the NFL, it's capped. I mean, so hey, man, go get it. Like, if you think that you're ready and you've put enough production together in college, I would have no problem with all 3 of those guys going to the next level, because that means they had a really productive season at Notre Dame. So, yeah, I agree with you. I would feel real good about the future of that room too.
I'd predict one of them to come back.
Okay.
I think the perfect world scenario for Notre Dame is two of the 3 leave.
Okay.
And let's just say Audric, because he had more touches more yards. It could be Logan, but let's just say Audric leaves and Tyree leaves. Logan Diggs comes back. I mean, could you imagine Logan Diggs, Jadarian Price, and Jeremiah Love as your trio?
Right.
You've got those 2 guys that are more explosive than the group the 1-2 you had the year before. Chris Tyree gets replaced by a 5-inch taller version of himself. You know what I mean? With a little bit more elusiveness. I mean, yeah, sign me up. You know what I mean?
Right.
No doubt.
Right.
If they can get one of the sophomores to come back, the current sophomores, if just one of them comes back in 2024, Notre Dame would be loaded. Yeah. Absolutely loaded.
Oh, yeah.
Again in 2024.
Again, yes, exactly. And for the foreseeable future, to be honest. So, yeah, it's going to be fun. Rick Doyle says Mayer or Bowers, who has the best NFL career? I know Bowers isn't leaving Georgia yet, but with all the talk that Bowers is better or is being the best tight end, I'm curious what you guys think. I'd go with Mayer.
I mean, Rick, this is going to sound like a cop out, but it's really not. Tell me who they get drafted by.
Yeah, huge.
And that's so much into, if Michael Mayer goes to a franchise that doesn't really use the tight end, then it won't be him. If Brock Bowers goes to a team that doesn't really feature the tight end, it won't necessarily be him, because here's the thing. Just because a GM thinks a guy can do something for you doesn't mean the coach is going to think that. There's a lot of stubborn coaches in the NFL, just like college, where, hey, I don't care if you drafted this guy in the first round. That's not going to fit my offense. My offense is my offense.
Right.
You'd think guys would be better than that, but they're not. They're not. So it just depends on where they go and, what do you define as better? I would imagine Brock Bowers will probably have more yards than Michael Mayer, most likely, just the style of tight end that he is. Doesn't mean he's better. Who's going to have the greater impact? We'll see. We'll see. The thing about Brock Bowers that would concern me a little bit is he's not a real big guy.
Mm-hmm.
And his speed is great at the end in the college level, but will that translate as well to the next level when he's going against Micah Parsons and not some kid from Vanderbilt?
Sure.
Right. That's where Michael Mayer is going to just still be bigger than anybody he's going up against.
Right. His game translates better to the NFL.
Yeah.
It just does.
Well, depending on where he goes, right?
Well, okay, fair enough.
Most of the tight ends that are great are 6'4", 6'5", and they're stronger guys and things like that. But Brock Bowers, you could also point to the Zach Ertzes and guys like that and say, well, Brock Bowers is a better version of those guys. And, okay, it's true. But it just depends on where they go. But I think they're both going to be really good, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't really lose out with either one. Of course, I'm gonna take Mayer. I think his game translates a little bit better to the NFL. But again, it all depends on where they go. If both of them go to a team that doesn't utilize the tight end very often, it's going to be neither. I mean, so it just all depends on how that shakes out. Okay, Lucas says, looking back at the last two previous signed offensive line classes, is there a player similar to Joe Alt, not in terms of All-American potential, but one that can far exceed your recruiting rankings?
Well, I mean, I had all those guys ranked kind of high with their upside grade, right? Same with Joe Alt. But if I'm going to say based on so the way that I do it, Lucas, and I don't know if you know this, but I give 2 grades. I give the current grade and then the upside grade. The guy that I think has the greatest chance to surpass his current grade is the guy that I had ranked lower than most, and that's Joe Otting. Because I need to see him. He'd be the most comparable to Joe Alt because he's an undersized guy that's really athletic, that's got to put on weight and get to that point. But I love Joe Otting's film. Love that kid's film. He's just 260 pounds. And anytime you have a guy that's got to put on minimum 30 pounds, Vince, there's always the concern that will he have the same level of athleticism once he gets there? Same thing with like Emil Wagner, who's not part of it. Well, I guess Emil Wagner would be there, but Emil Wagner's grade was still kind of high, but not as high as I had others because the others factor in the upside already into his ranking. I don't. My upside grade is his own thing, but he could potentially be one. But Joe Otting is the most obvious to me because he's the guy that has the big current to floor upside difference.
Okay.
And that's usually what it comes down to for me.
It ain't rocket science. Is the staff still recruiting JOK's little brother? Haven't heard anything about him in forever.
Well, he's a 2025 guy, so he's still another year away.
Okay.
So, yes, I believe they are still recruiting him, but it's a little too early for that. I want to bring something up here real quick, Vince, from Salty as a follow-up. He says, why would a team that doesn't use the tight end waste a first-round pick on either of them? Because GMs and coaches don't always agree on things. That's why. We see that all the time where a GM loves a kid, brings him in, and the coach is like, well, we're not building our system around that guy. And so they don't do it. It happens all the time. So you draft a guy that you think is a great player, and the coach says, well, he doesn't fit our system, so he's just not going to make a lot of plays. That's why.
It's nuts.
That's why.
Just ridiculous that they can't be on the same page. But
Vince, happens
I know.
Time.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing with you. It happens all the time. It's amazing how often it happens. But the fact that it does is just ridiculous to me. Gavin says, what are your guys' thoughts on Marcus Stokes being basically blacklisted from the Power 5 and ending up at West Florida?
We have a no politics policy on this show.
Correct. I don't know who this
So,
is, so I'm gonna have to
this
say
is the kid is a white quarterback that was recording himself rapping to a song, and then he used the N-word in it.
Oh, gotcha.
Number one, you're an idiot.
Agreed.
And like I'm not going to get into is it appropriate or not. I just don't even care to get into that conversation. My only response really is this is a lesson for you young people that think you have to freaking tweet and post every inane thought that comes to your freaking head.
Yep.
Okay? Stop. Most people don't care.
Right.
Okay? And the people that are watching are just looking for you to do something stupid so they can crush you.
Correct.
So I don't know the kid. I don't know if for him, it's just that him and his buddies sing this stuff all the time and his buddies don't look like him. I have no clue. For him and the people he hangs around, that may be an acceptable word. I have no clue. No clue. But what are you doing? You're a quarterback and you're not smart enough to know that's probably not something that I should put out on Twitter.
Right.
Right. Whatever.
That's a cautionary tale. I agree.
That's all I'm saying. I'm not going to say I don't have anything to say about how he's treated, whether it was right or wrong. It's just that's a lose conversation to have. Correct. And it starts getting into politics and culture, and this is a football show. And all I'm going to say is, young people, start keeping your opinions a little bit more to yourself if you want to have a future of doing anything.
Correct.
Because you will always have this stuff. I mean, do you remember what they tried to do to Josh Allen a couple of years ago? Remember that when he got drafted? Same thing when he's like 14 years old, he put some rap lyrics on a song and and the people, you look like that, so you can't say that. Okay.
Right. Yep. This is actually a conversation I had with my son. It's like, you have to be smarter than that.
Didn't they try to do something like that to Kyler Murray as well? Like, didn't they find something that Kyler Murray tweeted and he was like 13 or 14? They tried to.
People have no lives to go back 7, 8 years or whatever it happens to be and try to find things that are offensive or stupid or whatever. You name it, right? Just to dive into stuff. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Number one, that they're doing it. And number two, that people jump on it and they're like, yeah, this guy's a bad person because of that.
Some things are worth jumping on, right?
Sure. Well, sure.
But a lot of this is just like he's an idiot, right?
Right.
But,
Yeah, exactly. Anyway. All right. Here we go. From Milton Fan. He says, what player or unit group improved the most during the season?
On Notre Dame? I mean, it's offensive line.
Okay.
Clearly. I mean, they were bad the first 2 games.
They started out
and by the end of the year, they were outstanding. I mean, receivers got better. The production didn't get better receiver, but the play got better receiver.
That's where I was going to go because from start to finish, you're not wrong about offensive line. I wasn't even thinking about the offensive line because I just automatically think that they're good. But from where the receivers started to where they ended up was like a big difference.
A lot of people don't think that's true because they just look at production. Well, you beat Clemson, you didn't throw for 100. It doesn't mean guys weren't getting open.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't throw the dang ball to yourself.
Right.
The perfect example is Brady and Lindsey. We all year we're saying this guy's, and then what happens in the one game he has end of the year, he's quarterback one throwing deep ball and he smokes South Carolina secondary for a touchdown.
Right.
And it's just like, dude, he's been doing that all year.
Right.
And they don't throw him the ball.
I just have a feeling he's going to be sitting in his corner office at the whatever job he just took, and he's going to be watching.
Where he'll be making a lot of money.
Of course.
Right?
100%. That's why I said corner office.
He's a smart kid.
Yeah,
right.
That's why I said corner office because he's going to be doing just fine. But he's going to be watching these games on a Saturday where he's putting in extra work and he's doing his thing. He's going to watch a game on his computer, and he's going to see Sam Hartman just chucking the ball deep all day, and he's going to be like, son of a gun. Like, where was this?
Yep.
Oh, I feel bad for the man. I do. But he got his degree and he's doing things. So good for him. But that's going to be super frustrating. All right. Thank you everybody for participating.
Hold on. There's a couple of those I want to get to that you didn't get to, Vince.
Pull them up. What do you got?
So I don't know why you passed some of these, man.
Well, one of them I was going to put into rapid fire.
Okay.
The team one, I was going to add
that one.
But
here's a couple others. Number one, here we go.
Okay.
I have this one. Brian and Vince, what are your Super Bowl picks from Irish Chi-Town?
Oh, man. I definitely don't have a dog in the fight either direction. I'm going to go with Kansas City.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Kansas City. They are I just think they have a lot of talent. Obviously, the Eagles have a ton of talent on defense. So it's going to be the Eagles defense versus Kansas City's offense. Which wins that battle? I'm going to take Kansas City's offense, so I will take Kansas City.
I don't know who I'm picking. I don't watch NFL enough. I know who I'm rooting for, and I'm rooting for the Chiefs for a million reasons. I've said this. I don't like Nick Sirianni. I don't know why. The dude just rubs him the wrong way. He just strikes me as a giant, you know what. Look, I like coaches with energy and all that, but there's a line that you can cross where you're just kind of being a D-bag at that point in time. That's the energy he gives me, is that, and it's like he's doing an interview with his kids and he's like getting on his skin. I'm like, dude, you brought your little children out to the press conference. What were you expecting them to do? Like, wait there, say, yes, thank you. I'll wait for any of your questions. Like, what you getting mad at your kids for, man? Like, let them be your kids,
Right.
But, it is what it is. But they were adorable little kids, though. They were so excited to be up on that stage with him. It was funny. But did you see his daughter like mocking him?
Was she really?
Yeah, it was so funny. He looks at her, he's like, and it's like, well, you didn't know she was going to do that? Your kids.
Yeah, exactly.
But I also just don't like Philly at anything. I don't like Philadelphia. I don't like Philly fans that much. They're just like, I don't want them to win at anything. They're going to burn the city if they do. I mean, they do that every time they win something. They just burn stuff. They're like Michigan State fans. It's like, yeah,
they just burn stuff.
They just burn stuff. So I did want to bring this one up from Anthony Salmi. He says, how about letting the IB fans send in topics for Friday rapid fire show? It would help the staff and give IB Nation some skin in the game. So that won't be for rapid fire, but there is something that I have in the works that I don't want to talk too much about. That's going to be IB After Dark is eventually going to become a thing. Ooh. And it'll be somewhat geared towards that. So there'll be some topics that I'll discuss, and then some fan picked topics. It's going to be something along those lines, and it'll be decided by people that are on the message board.
Okay.
So I wanted to bring this up because that is something. I don't know when we're going to launch it because we got a lot of other things we're working on right now. I'm still trying to hire an editor. That got pushed back a week because of some stuff that came up with the family and the business and all that. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things that we are going to do. I just don't know when.
Okay.
So, or if it'll be live. It may just be a thing where I record and put up at night, but it may be live. So there's a lot of things to work out, Anthony. So I don't know when but it'll be part of it will be geared towards what do y'all want to talk about? And so, yeah. So I just wanted I wanted to speak on that.
Okay. Sounds good to me. All right, Brian, are you ready for some rapid fire questions?
Of course.
I love it. I love when you're here for rapid fire. Okay. So, number one, right out of the gate, Tom Brady, obviously retiring from the NFL again, did his little video from the beach or wherever the heck he was. When you think of Tom Brady, what comes to mind? Open-ended.
Well, it's kind of twofold. The first one is just an appreciation for greatness. I always respect greatness. And he was a great player. We can get into a lot of other things were brought up on our show today. Is he the greatest of all time, et cetera, et cetera? Like, okay, that's much more debatable. Say if I had to pick a quarterback for my all-time team, he's not it, right? Doesn't mean he wouldn't be in consideration, but he's not it. Vince, you know who that pick would be for me.
I do.
But the other part is like, there's the other part, like, but just like a great player that just kind of got on my nerves because he's just so dang whiny.
Yeah.
Like, so I have those twofold things, but
yeah.
in all seriousness though, the guy was a tremendous competitor and a tremendous winner. And whatever you think about him personally or how the media covered him or whatever the case may be, the guy was a great player. And anytime you see someone who's great that is no longer going to do it or do it great, you just kind of, tip your cap and realize, hey, I'm not going to get to watch that again. But then you start thinking, that's why I'm glad we have YouTube and NFL films and all that other kind of stuff so I can pop it up. But no, he was a great player, more than a great competitor. He reminded me so much of like the Jordan. I said this earlier in the show. He reminds me so much of the Jordan Bird era. Sure. Where it wasn't that they were just great talents, but those were super competitive guys, man.
Sure.
Just like tremendous. Like they didn't sit out games. They didn't do the whole what do they call it now? Like the rest. What do they do what do they call in the NBA when guys don't play?
Load management.
Bull crap.
Management.
Like
That's
that
so
wasn't how the NBA
terrible.
players were back then. It's like I didn't want to miss
can't-
one of the 82 games. I wanted to, and it's not because they felt an obligation to the fans. It's because they were competitors.
Yes.
They wanted to win and dominate every time they stepped the field. And Tom Brady had a lot of that. He had a lot of that.
Oh, he's a competitor. No,
yeah.
I mean, that's what made him as good as he was, right?
Because he wasn't he wasn't John Elway, Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes.
No, he didn't have half the talent as most of those guys. But he was competitive off the field with his diet and his regimen, and he kept himself in great shape. All of those things led to, and his study habits, all of those things led him to being great, no doubt.
Right.
And obviously he had, an IQ. But what I think about when I think of Tom Brady, outside of the fact that he went to Michigan, of course, but that's not the first thing that I think of, because to be honest with you, I don't remember him at Michigan. He was very unmemorable.
He played in one of the best bowl games I've ever seen.
Okay.
The Orange Bowl his last year when they played Alabama and came back and beat Alabama. When Alabama had Sean Alexander as their running back, that was an amazing bowl game. I think it was like 99.
So I'd have to go back and watch it.
No, seriously watch it.
That's my freshman year in college, so I definitely did not watch that.
I don't know if you're going to want to watch it, Vince, because I think Michigan won.
Well,
I think.
That's fair.
But, yeah, Michigan won 35-34. I think the Alabama kid missed a game-tying extra point at the end. But if you can get past the fact that it was Alabama, that was Michigan, it was a great game. Just a great – it was back and forth the whole game. Some names from that: David Terrell, Sean Alexander, Freddie Millens, Anthony Thomas. So just some great names. Great ball game. It was constantly back and forth. It was 14-0 Bama. Then Michigan came back and tied it. Then Bama went ahead 28-14. Michigan came back and tied it. They went to overtime. Michigan scored in overtime. Bama then scored, and then they missed the extra point. So it was a tremendous game. Just a great game. So yeah, that's something I'll always remember about him is he was part of that big. And I'll always remember the Drew Henson controversy. How Michigan fans and coaches just tried so hard to push Drew Henson, and every time they did, Tom Brady was just there to step in and win you a game, but he was a great competitor.
My biggest memory, and I was never a Tom Brady fan, I'll be honest with you, but that first Super Bowl, it was technically the 2002 Super Bowl, but it was after the 2001 season and everything that went on. And they did feel very much, because they were the underdog going into that game. They felt kind of like America's team at the time. Like, I don't know what it was. I found myself rooting for the Patriots in that particular game. And when they won, it was, the last second field goal, Vinatieri, all of that. It was like, man, this is awesome.
They were because it was after it was the 2001 season.
Yeah, correct.
And it was the 2002 Super Bowl.
Correct. Yes, it was after the 2001 season.
They were the Patriots, the red, white, and blue.
Yes.
The underdogs.
Even the logo was like the United States of America with stripes, and it was the colors of the Patriots.
It was a very fitting Super Bowl winner. There's no doubt. The other thing too about that season, I'll never forget that, because I remember the night before 9/11, I was up watching the Broncos-Giants Monday night game. And that was the game Ed McCaffrey's career got ended with a bad injury. Remember that? And then I remember the next morning being in the office, getting a call from my mom. She's like, are you watching TV? Have you heard what's going on? And then you just get told. So I got in my car, went home, and by the time I got home, they were showing the second plane had hit, and they were showing the replays of it. And it was like, wow, like our world's never going to be the same. And then later that day when they fell, you just knew the life I had yesterday is never going to be our country's never going to be the same as it was. And it isn't, it hasn't been, not anywhere close. And it was, I'll never forget that. But then, like you said, there was sports is what unified us, right?
Oh, 100%.
Whether you like George Bush or not, you remember that first pitch he threw out against Yankee Stadium where he just threw a strike. You remember the World Series that year. You remember the Patriots winning the Super Bowl. Sports unified us in a lot of ways.
Oh, yes.
And I don't know if it can do that anymore, but at the time it did.
Yeah.
And it was,
and you could just feel it. Yeah.
You felt like there was some higher power was guiding the Patriots to the Super Bowl that year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. No doubt. And that's probably why I was rooting for him because, of course, I didn't have a dog in the fight with the Rams and the Patriots.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't had a dog in the fight since 1985. So,
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, next question. Jaden Rashada, the former Florida commit, just committed to Arizona State. This means blank for former Notre Dame quarterback Drew Pine.
Means he better start well. Look, I don't think Jaden Rashada is the typical come in and play right away guy. He's very raw. He's very talented, but he's very raw. He's very he's just going to need time. He's a boomer bust guy. He may never pan out. But he could also be phenomenal. But if he's as good as we think, he's probably going to need some time. So if Drew Pine's not balling in the first half of the year, assuming he wins the starting job, which, I don't know if that's necessarily a given.
Sure.
But assuming he wins the starting job, he better play well early and lead them to some victories. Because if he's not playing well, because here's the deal, Vince, they're not going to have a whole lot of wins at Arizona State where they're going to beat a ranked team by rushing for 980 by throwing for 86 yards. Right. And the schedule's not easy early for him. It's Southern Utah W, but then it's Oklahoma State, Fresno, USC, at Cal. It's not going to be super easy for him. And if they're struggling at that point in time, you got Colorado at home and then a bye week. Don't think that they won't make a move on going into that Colorado game and then give a bye week. And then after that, it's at Washington, home against Washington State, at Utah, at UCLA, home against Oregon, home against Arizona. It's not going to be an easy schedule. So if he's not playing well early, they will move on. So what does it mean for Drew Pine? It means he better play well early if he wants to hold on to his job.
Yeah,
I hope he does. I got no beef with Drew.
Oh, I don't either. I just thought it was interesting that they land that kid.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was there's no way Drew Pine's sitting at home and sees that on his Twitter feeds like, all right, let's go.
Yeah. Like, you got to be kidding me.
Exactly. The heat just got turned up just a little bit on Drew Pine. And I'm not saying he can't handle that. He's been in the limelight. He's been at Notre Dame. Like, go ahead and turn the heat up. Let's see what happens with Drew Pine. But it's not going to be a given anymore. And I don't know that it was before, but the heat just got turned up a little bit. And like I said, I think that could be good for him. So we'll see. That'll be good. All right, we're going in the Wayback Machine here a little bit. The 2000 Baltimore Ravens are getting their own 30 for 30 named the Bullies of Baltimore. So, Brian, scale of 1 to 10, the chances that you will watch.
At some point, probably a 9.
Okay.
Will I watch it when it comes out?
Day. I'm not saying like you're going to be standing in line at a theater or anything, but like, is that something that piques your interest? Are you going to watch that?
I think, I'm, you all know, I'm pretty anti ESPN, but I've said before, that type of product is the best stuff that they do by far.
Agreed.
The 30 for 30 series is just, it's hard to find. The only bad ones they've had are ones that I just don't care about the topic. There was one I think about I don't know, like gambling or something like that. Like, just didn't care. There's one about racing. I just don't care. I don't. Racing doesn't interest me. But like everyone that I've watched, the topic interested me. They've all been great to some degree, and some of them have just been like some of the best TV you'll ever watch. I mean, the ones on the U were tremendous,
fantastic.
Catholics versus Convicts was good. I didn't love it because I didn't the whole. Oh, I was so offended by the Catholics versus Convicts shirt. Shut up.
That's a t-shirt made by college kids.
That annoyed me.
Yeah.
I got to listen to Chuck Todd whining about this. Just really hurt my feelings. Dan Lebitard, I just was really sad by this. Like, shut up.
Yeah, you
know what I mean? Like, lighten up. But I just hate when people put modern sensibilities on something that happened 30 years ago. Right. But other than that part, that was a really good show. Right. A really, really good. I thought they did a good job. Like The Best That Never Was about Marcus Dupree. Phenomenal.
That was a really good
one. It was great. The Pony Excess about the SMU. That was great.
I learned a lot because I had no idea all the details that went into that because I was too young. Yeah. And so that one was really interesting.
The Celtics Lakers one they did, which was like a 3-parter. That one was awesome. They did a great one on that one too. So then actually this wasn't a 30 for 30, but they did a documentary on the 83 draft. the quarterback draft,
Yes.
and they had the agent who was Elway and Marino's agent, and
Yes.
Elway went first, and that was awesome.
And he had all of his notes. Like, he was smart enough to take all those notes.
Yes.
Which was brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
It was great.
Time.
It was so well done.
Oh.
So when ESPN does stuff like that, it's first class, man. It's so good.
Yeah.
And so I'll watch it eventually. I won't be like dying to like watch it the minute it comes out, but I'll probably watch it relatively soon after it comes out. I'll probably record it. And
I don't know when it's coming out. I just saw that it was announced, but if it comes out now, I'll probably watch it like in the summertime when I'm jonesing for some football. Like that's when I'll throw it in, at night when the kids are in bed. Like, I need some football. I need a football fix. Oh, yeah, the Ravens documentary. I'll watch that.
Right.
Like that. So I'll watch. So it's a 10 because I'm going to watch it. But yeah, I'm not going to be like, okay, when does it come out? When does it come out? Like that.
Yeah.
I'm not there.
Well, and I promise you that there's going to be a lot of storylines about it. Right. And like the Trent Dilfer, and there's just a lot of things. But like what happened right, they're going to talk about what happened right afterwards. Because with Ray Lewis.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
That they're going to discuss, as they should. I mean, it was an interesting topic. But yeah, that's going to be a very.
It'll be interesting how they treat it. I mean, that whole part.
Yeah. Somebody just mentioned the one about the one about the Red Sox. That was great.
It was good.
So there's just been so many of those that are just excellent. Just 100% excellent.
100%.
I wish ESPN did more of that and less of the other crap that they do. Like, how many talking heads do we need to have all day talking about the same freaking thing?
All day long.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't even watch ESPN except for the games. And even that has been the production and the quality has not been great.
No.
Of those.
No.
So
it hasn't.
Yeah, it's not good. All right, next question. It is blank that Dion Sanders now has the last 2 number 1 corners according to the recruiting services.
Good for college football. I know a lot of people don't agree with this, but I hope Dion keeps getting top players. Because, like, when is Notre Dame going to – what chance did Notre Dame have of getting Travis Hunter or Kermani McLean?
Good call.
0.
Send them to Colorado.
But you know who did have a chance? Clemson, Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, right? So will Notre Dame lose some kids to Colorado? Sure. But you know what? They're not losing them to Alabama. I've always said this. I want more good teams in college football. I want Miami to come back. I want Florida State to come back. I want Tennessee to come back. I want Texas to be great again. I want those teams. I didn't like it when USC sucked. I've said this before. I want Washington to kind of get back to who they are, because the more you see that, the more this talent gets spread out. And then that's good for Notre Dame, because Notre Dame will always have that unique pull for some kids.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it hurts Notre Dame as much if those teams are effective or more or better and winning more games. It takes kids away from Bama. It'll take kids away from Georgia. It'll take some kids away from Ohio State and LSU, much more so than it'll take kids away from Notre Dame, in my opinion. And I think it's good for college football. Right now, do I want it to be because you're offering kids millions of dollars as enticements? No, but even if they change NIL, they're going to have a lot of money pouring into that Colorado program in order to get guys to so the current players have NIL deals, which I'm all about, right? And then guys want to go there because you're going to Colorado and play for Dion, and they got Aflac and they got Nike and got this other stuff. You're going to get yours. Okay, cool. Then that's awesome. Do that.
Yeah.
I know not everybody agrees with that. There just seems to be this weird like anti-Dion thing, like he has to earn something, and I'm like, okay, I get that, but like let's not forget the fact that the guy took a really bad Jackson State team that I think the previous 7 or 8 years had like one winning season at Jackson State, and they went 23-3 in his 2 years basically as a full-time coach. Because the first year was COVID, they went 4-3 as the COVID years, weird COVID year. They went 23-3, right? Well, they got a bunch of yeah, exactly. Dion's going to attract players to go play for him.
Sure.
And I think there's this other thing that there's this assumption that Dion can't coach. Now, can Dion out-coach Nick Saban? No, he's been a coach 3 years. Like, of course not. But you don't go 23-3 just because you recruited some transfers, right? Like, they can clearly coach to a degree. He's made some good hires already at Colorado. Tim Brewster's not much of a human being, but the guy can freaking recruit. You know what I mean? And he knows how to get money from one place to another place where it needs to be. He's always been great at that. And so he's made some good hires. And that's a big part of being a successful coach is, hey, I don't have this experience. Let me hire some other guys that do have that experience. So look, people can get upset and in their feelings about, oh, Dion's this and Dion's that. And then some of the antics that Dion does, I don't particularly care for, but everybody's got their own, favorite slice of pie, right? But the results are what they are. And Dion, to me, is going to do a lot more damage to the Alabamas, the Clemsons, and those teams than they're going to do to Notre Dame. And I am a big fan of the talent being spread out in college football.
Yeah.
A big fan of that.
Yeah.
And Dion helps with that. Washington being good again helps with that. People may not like it, but Lincoln Riley is good for that. Right? And so I want to see it. Texas winning more games is good for that because that means fewer kids going, they'll beat Bama for a kid or two here or there. And Bama doesn't need to lose their top 15 recruits to not be as good. It's like just of their top 15, one team takes this guy, one team takes that guy, one team takes. Here's an example. If USC was the current USC, Bryce Young's at USC, not Alabama. So remember, Bryce Young was originally committed to USC. He's a modern day kid. And then decommitted because of all the issues going on at USC and flipped to Bama. If Lincoln Riley was the head coach when Bryce Young was still in high school, and then who's Bama's quarterback now?
Yeah.
Right? They haven't recruited quarterback all that well in recent seasons. So to me, that's good for college football, in my view. It's good for college football when the talent gets spread out more. It's good for Notre Dame.
Agreed. So, I think that's the best point you made. I mean, you made a lot of really good points, but that's the best point. Spread the talent out.
Yeah.
Because you don't want all the talent going to Alabama
and Georgia.
Clemson and Georgia and Ohio State, or, pick your 3 to 4 teams. You don't want all the talent going there. Spread it out. Not Texas, USC, Colorado. Colorado can have them all. Or not all, but Colorado can have a bunch. That's fine. I still like where Notre Dame's place is, and I agree with Anthony on this one that I don't think Notre Dame and Colorado are going to be going head-to-head a lot on the trip.
Not a lot. No.
I agree
not
with
a lot.
That.
Because especially in Florida, because where are those two big-time players from? One was from Georgia, one was from Florida. Well, Notre Dame's not getting a 5-star cornerback from Georgia. They're not getting a 5-star cornerback from Florida. Those kids are not looking at Notre Dame no matter what.
Exactly.
So, but, again, they're going to look at Bama. They're going to look at Georgia. They're going to look at Ohio State. They're going to look at Clemson and LSU. Well, they didn't go there. Went to Colorado and Jackson State. Right?
Go
Great.
for it. Awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
Absolutely. All right. This was the final question, but it's not going to be the final question tonight. Other than football, what is your favorite Notre Dame sport to watch? So you're not covering, you're just going to watch. What's your favorite sport?
Women's basketball team.
Okay.
Number 1, I like winners. Number 2,
fair.
I'm a basketball purist, and I know a lot of people are going to disagree with this, but women's basketball, when done right, I'll say it's women's basketball has the greatest disparity between the really good and the bad, like just the ugly.
Oh, yes.
But women's basketball played in its purest form by talented girls that are coached well is a really fun thing to watch. And this current women's basketball team, to me, is fun to watch. I mean, you've got a dynamic point guard that does some crazy. I mean, she makes more highlight reel passes than anything that you're seeing from the men's team right now.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a team where it's a different player every night stepping up. One night it's Lauren Ebo. The next night it's Maddie Westbeld. The next night it's Sonia Citron. Olivia Miles does her thing. If her shot's not falling, she'll just go out and have 5 steals and 8 assists and 6 rebounds. You know what I mean? And they battle back. They've had some comeback wins. They deal with adversity well. They're recruiting well. And so it's just a fun product to watch. I mean, I prefer men's basketball when it's good over women's basketball because the explosiveness is I like the occasional alley-oop and dunking on people, but I don't like it when that's all you're doing.
Right.
Like that's why I think Kentucky basketball for years has just been boring to watch. It's just a bunch of really tall athletic guys that can jump and run, but they don't
it's just
play.
A bunch of street ball.
Well, I wouldn't say that about Kentucky. Some of it is. It's just more of there's not a lot of skill. They can't really shoot. They're just tall, athletic, and they run and defend, but it's not fun basketball to watch. I like basketball in its purest form, which is playing tempo, passing, running sets. Like that's why I hate the NBA. It's like every time I watch, it's like just a bunch of pick and rolls and it's
ISO.
slow and it's just like
ISO.
they don't defend. It's ice. It just this isn't basketball. Like and part of it's when you grew up. I grew up in an era when you'd watch the Celtics and Lakers and they'd go on a fast break and the ball would hit the ground once. You know what I mean? Because it was just bam, 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 bam. And the Celtics were a bunch of slow dudes, but they would go on breaks. They would score. They're fighting around, getting on picks and all this other kind of stuff. Like that's what I love about basketball. I love where you've got to run sets. You've got to move the ball. You got to pass. You've got to attack. And I think women's basketball, and when it's done right, does that. And, I know a lot of people don't like Gino Auriemma, but the fact is that guy doesn't just win because he gets the best players. He gets the best players, and he teaches them how to play the game, and it's impressive to watch. Now, his recent teams haven't been as good as some of his past teams, but that's what I loved about that Notre Dame team that had the national championship, and then the next year went to the championship game again and lost. But that team knew how to play basketball.
Yeah,
and I think this team isn't as good as that team, but it's fun to watch.
They're going to make a run. I mean, I don't know how far they'll go, but they'll make a run. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. For me, it's baseball, just because I love baseball, and one of the things I got to do when I first started into this business was calling games with Sean Stiers, back in the day, and I just love watching Notre Dame baseball whenever I get an opportunity. But a very close second will be the women's basketball team for everything that you just mentioned, and because I also love to go and support Sean. So
sure,
yeah,
I just like excellence, right, Vince?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why the first time I've really watched the baseball team since I've been covering Notre Dame is the last 2 years under Link Jarrett, because they were good.
They were good.
I don't like watching bad sports. I don't like watching bad football. I don't like watching bad baseball. I like watching excellence.
Yeah,
because you're talking about as a casual fan, because I don't watch any of those sports religiously. Sure. I like excellence. And the women's basketball team right now is excellent. The baseball team under Link Jarrett was excellent. I'm hoping Coach Schaefer can do the same thing, because you watch them play in the postseason, Vince. I mean, they knew how to play. They knew how to run. They knew how to move runners over. They could play great defense.
Yes.
That's what was so disappointing about that one game they lost, because they can't. That was it against Mississippi State the year before in the College World Series. Like they lost one of those. They dominated the other two, the other games, but that one game they lost because they just were doing things they weren't used to doing. They were kicking the ball around and stuff.
Right.
But that was so unusual. That team just knew how to play.
Yes.
With no first round picks or anything like that. They just knew how to play. They were well coached. So I like excellence. And so, that's why I've enjoyed the baseball team. But just you see more of the women's team. You don't get to see as much of the baseball team.
Right. Too. Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah.
Yep. All right, last one, and this was a mailbag question, but I think I decided to bring it up during rapid fire. This is kind of a healthy one. We're gonna try to get through it as quick as we can, but we'll see. Man. All right, Coach Koch, I believe I'm pronouncing that right. He goes, here's one: pulling from players from 2000 on. What does your all-star lineup look like? O-line. Oh, he wants us to go too deep on the O-line. 3 running backs. Tight end, 3 deep at receiver, can be the best or your favorite players. Then he wants us to do it on defense too.
Yeah. So number one, I'm naming starters. I'm not going too deep. I'll name starters, and then my next off the bench is the best I'm doing. So let's start off at quarterback. Can you just go position by position, Vince? Both give ours.
Perfect.
Quarterback, I'm going Brady Quinn.
Yep.
You can make a case for Jimmy Clausen, but I want a leader at quarterback, and as beautiful of a ball as Jimmy threw and Everett threw, two of the best pure passers. They weren't great leaders.
Yeah.
I'm going Brady Quinn at quarterback.
Okay. Agreed.
Running back. So this is from 2000 on. I wish I could do Jerome Bettis, but I can't.
Yeah, he's
so from 2000 on, I'm probably going with Julius Jones. Is probably where I'm going there.
Okay.
That's my number 1 back.
Interesting. Okay.
My number 2 back, because I think that's when you want to give 2 backs. My number 2 back, that's an interesting one. Vince, who would you have as your 1 running back?
I like Julius Jones. He was there when I was watching a lot of games as a student. Who was Brian Kelly's first, like the kid that he converted from defense?
From defense?
Yeah, wasn't he a corner?
You're talking about CJ Procise?
Yeah, thank you. Procise.
2015.
Yeah, I think having him on there as the second back would be great because he's very versatile.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah, my number. That's a good one for the number 2, just because you could see. That's kind of why I think you can make a case for like a Theo Riddick kind of guy,
absolutely.
and it's also a case where you could. I think to me, my number 2 would be Darius Walker because he'd be my third down back.
Okay,
Darius Walker's my third down back would be really good because he could catch the football. So that would be my running back. Who's your starting? We're going to go 11 personnel, Vince. So who's your starting receivers? I mean, from 2000 on, you have to go Will Fuller. I mean, he has to be in that conversation.
Okay.
You have to go Michael Floyd. You have to go Golden Tate for me. I know, with all due respect to Jeff Samardzija and Mo Stovall and Raymond McKnight, and like to me, that's my trio.
See, I was gonna try to find a place for Samardzija because he's just one of my favorite players of all time.
Right. You could take Floyd off if you wanted to.
I just loved him.
Imagine. Yeah.
I mean, that's who I would take off, but I don't know that I could. You know what I mean? Like that's the problem. The 3 that you named are the 3 best in that stretch.
And they played best together. But then my next two guys off the bench are Mo Stovall and Samardzija. That's my next 2 off the bench.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I'm playing 5 guys. There's no doubt.
Right. Absolutely.
There's no doubt. Tight end.
It's Michael Mayer.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's him and Eifert. It's a tough one. If I'm going 12 personnel, that's easy. It's Eifert. And now here's a question, Vince. Would you be better off being 11 personnel with those 3 receivers, or 12 personnel with 2 of those receivers, and then Eifert and Mayer?
Can I just have it all?
Yes,
Can I just have it all and just rotate it around?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Somebody asked about Chase Claypool. Chase Claypool had like 1 good year at Notre Dame. He just wasn't disciplined enough for me.
Yeah.
Most, with the exception of Stovall, all the guys that we mentioned had multiple big years.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And Claypool just wasn't, he was incredibly talented, but he just didn't bring the same consistency year after year and the same focus as those other guys. They were dogs. Chase was just incredibly gifted. He wasn't a dog. Those guys were all dogs, man. They were just, they wanted the football.
Yeah.
So, but you can't go wrong. I mean, if you wanted to add Chase Claypool, I'm not gonna say you're wrong. I'm just explaining why he's not on mine.
Right.
Offensive line, left to right, Vince. This one's a little bit tougher because there's been some great ones. But for me, left to right, I'm going Zach Martin at left tackle.
Okay.
I'm going Quentin Nelson at left guard.
Obviously.
Right tackle for me is probably Ronnie Stanley.
Okay.
But I'm really tempted to go with McGlinchey because when McGlinchey was at right tackle, he was phenomenal. But I'm probably going to go Ronnie Stanley. My second guard, that's a little bit of a tougher one. So from 2000 on, because I know I'm missing some guys that played in the 2000s. But left to right, center. Because I keep wanting to say Jeff Fain, but I can't do Jeff Fain because he was in the 90s.
Yeah, he's too old.
So I'm trying to think because Rosenthal was in the 90s.
Yeah.
Pettigout was in the 90s. So we got Zach Martin. Well, do you agree with the ones I've given you so far?
Yes, 100%.
Zach Martin, left tackle.
100%. I would
Quentin
definitely go with
Nelson.
Stanley over McGlinchey for sure.
Yeah. My other guard.
It's cheating, but you could move Martin into guard and put McGlinchey out at tackle.
You could. I mean, he became that. I was trying to stick as much as I could to what they played in college.
Yes, I think that those should be the rules. I'm just saying that. So it's kind of cheating. But if you're trying to get your best 5 out there.
Yeah, no, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. I mean, you had Mike Gandy was a pretty good player. Boy. That's
Center is a tough one. You can't really go wrong.
And
with
there's
Jarrett
Chris
Patterson
Watt.
Center.
Yeah, I probably in the 2000s on. Hold on a second. Now Jeff Fain played in the 2000s.
Oh, did he?
Correct. I'm pretty sure
Jeff. I thought he was a '90s guy, but
I thought he finished his career in the 2000s. I could be wrong. Yeah, he was drafted in 2003.
Oh, okay.
So Jeff Fain's my center.
Oh, well, there you go. I thought he was in the 90s.
Easily. I was too at first.
Yeah,
I was too at first.
Completely agree with you then.
That's an easy one. That's Jeff Fain. That he was a dude. Jeff Fain he's definitely my center.
Yes.
With all due respect to John Sullivan, who I never cared much for, and all those other guys, he is that one. So now we're down to our last guard. So who are the options? You've got Aaron Banks, Again, we're going to talk about guys who played guard. You got Aaron Banks, you got Alex Bars. Let's see here. Chris Watt. Chris Watt was a good one. Dan Stevenson, Mike Gandy was one. And those are really it. I'm probably going to go. I'm going to probably go Chris Watt just for like Aaron Banks' last year at Notre Dame was really good.
Sure.
But he was just kind of okay. And those other years, I'm probably going to go with
Chris Watt had just I'm going to kick your ass mentality, though.
Yeah.
And I love that from my guards. You're telling me I get to have Chris Watt and Nelson at guard
and Jeff Fain at center.
That's a
bunch of maulers right there, cuz.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a bunch of maulers right there, son. There's no doubt about that, man.
Right.
Those are some flat. We're gonna fight you and beat you, and you may beat us, but you're gonna have to kill us. I mean, that is some dogs right there, buddy.
Yes, and that's what I want from my interior. Right. That's what I want from my interior offensive line.
And then you got, and if you were going to take guys off their best single season, I still think Liam Eichenberg's 2020 season was better than Ronnie Stanley's best season. I do. I thought Liam Eichenberg was excellent, but Ronnie Stanley had 2 really good seasons.
Yeah.
Or at least his 2 best seasons were better than Eichenberg's. His second best season was better than Eichenberg's second best season. Yeah. Yep.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff.
Yep. And then defensive end.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm going Justin Tuck and Isaiah Foskey, although Foskey's going to be my big end.
Okay.
My 3 technique is going to be Stephon Tuitt.
Okay.
My nose tackle is going to be Lewis Nix. I think that's going to be my D-line because a lot of the other great D-linemen, Bryant Young was in the 90s, right? I mean, a lot of those, Chris Zorich was in the 80s and 90. So, I mean, Tillery, I've always felt Tillery's a tad overrated. I thought he had like a couple of really good games. You could look at Sheldon Day, could be in that conversation. And I'm kind of cheating because if I'm going to go with a 4 down, Stephon Tuitt wasn't technically a defensive end. He was a big end in a 3 down defense. So he's more of a 3 technique to me. So that's why I'm going with him on that one. Sheldon Day, Trevor Laws, Derek Landry are all part of that equation. But I just think that group that I just mentioned was the best. Okay. Now, Trevor Laws and Derek Landry and Sheldon Day are coming off the bench for me. It'd be a little harder to find some backup ends. Victor Abimiri be in that conversation for the ends. But yeah, my interior is going to be pretty dang good of that one. But yeah, some people say I just wasn't a huge Jerry Tillery fan. He was too inconsistent for me.
He was.
He really had 1 year of production, and half of his sacks that year came in 1 game. And he had like 1 sack the rest of the year, like 7 games the rest of the year.
Kind of a head case to me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm sorry. Just give me Stephon Tuitt and Lewis Nix and Derek Landry and Trevor Laws and Sheldon Day. I mean, just Sheldon Day's last year in Notre Dame in 2015. He was tremendous. I mean, 15.5 tackles for loss. He was outstanding. So that's my group. Victor Abimiri would be my next end. He'd be my kind of coming off the bench guy with Foskey. Those would be my guys there.
I like it.
Linebacker. This is a pretty easy one. I mean,
Jalen Smith.
If it's anyone other than my Rovers, Jeremiah Wusu-Koramoah, my Mike is Manti Te'o, and my Will is God. Smith. If it's anybody other than that, Vince, you're fired.
3 Butkus Award winners all lining up at linebacker. I'm
kidding about you being fired, but yes. It's the biggest no-brainer there is.
Yes. I mean, that's the easiest position group we have so far.
Safety's pretty easy as well. In my opinion, it's Harrison Smith and Kyle Hamilton.
Okay.
Cornerback in the 2000s. What say you?
Julian Love would be hard to keep off the field.
He'd be my field corner, yes.
Okay.
And my boundary corner is going to surprise you a little bit.
You can't.
Yes, I can.
Ben Morrison, are you?
Yes, I can.
I knew it.
Yes, I can.
I knew it.
Yes, I can.
I knew
Nobody had a. I mean, he was brilliant this year, and he's the best boundary corner that they've had. I mean, just put a guy in the boundary and play him man to man. I mean, with all due respect to Shane, Walton and Vontez Duff and Robert Bland and Darren Walls and Gary Gray and Kavari Russell and Cole Luke and Troy Pride and all those guys, Benjamin Morrison is just a flat out star.
Yeah.
You give me to the field, you give me Julian Love and Benjamin Morrison to the boundary, and I'm going to have with Harrison Smith and Kyle Hamilton at safety.
You got pretty good secondary. Yeah.
Pretty dang good secondary.
Who's your nickel?
My nickel?
You can't really go wrong with the way Tariq Bracy played this past year.
I mean, Cole Luke was pretty good as a nickel.
You're
probably,
right.
you know who I'd probably put in the nickel? He didn't play in the nickel. I'd probably put Kavari there. I think Kavari would have been a great
Okay.
nickel.
All right.
And Kavari Russell would have been a great nickel. Yeah, he'd have been there. Somebody said, what about Zibby? Zibby was a great guy. He was a
great safety.
He'd be a rover in today's defense.
Yeah,
he was not a great cover. Zibby was he was really good at forcing turnovers.
Yeah.
And he was a great hitter, but he was
just
not
wasn't
good in coverage.
Yeah, no. He's not good. He got beat so many times in coverage. Yeah. And look, if I'm putting together my punt return team, I put it back there returning punts. Like,
there's no doubt.
Returner.
There's no doubt. He's my starting punt returner. Yeah. There's no question about that.
There's room. There's room for Zibikowski on my team. He's my punt returner.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely.
Yeah, that's it. And, I think that's a pretty good squad. What say you, Vince?
I think we can win a couple games with that group.
Yeah, I think so, too.
You and I coaching it, we could probably win a few games.
Yeah. I don't even think we could screw that up.
That's what I'm saying.
Here's one. Who's your backup quarterback?
My backup quarterback? Clausen has a ton of talent, but I don't know that he would want to sit and be someone's backup.
It's all right. You get a pick. That guy's going to want to be on your team. He can't He can't play for anybody else. He's got to play for Notre Dame. That's the team that he played for. So he can't go play for Alabama. He's got to play for the team he played for.
But if we're just going talent, it's got to be Clausen.
It's him or Everett for me.
Okay,
that's who it is for me. With all due respect to all the other guys, it's got to be one. And here's my hope is, and if we're having a serious conversation, let's pretend this is going to happen. I think Jimmy Clausen sitting behind Brady Quinn for 2 years would have been phenomenal for him.
Yeah,
because he could have learned how do you win respect in the locker room.
Correct.
That way,
right?
And the fact that him and Brady were a year apart and he never actually got to learn from Brady killed him, because Jimmy's biggest thing was an utter lack of humility that he was not provided by his family.
Yes,
and Charlie Weiss didn't help it at all.
No.
So to me, Jimmy, needed that. And I think he would have learned a little bit of that from Brady. Wouldn't be able to kind of, hey, because here's the thing: if you'd have messed with Brady too much, Brady's a big dude, right? Mm-hmm. Brady doesn't miss curl day and doesn't miss leg day, right? Okay, so you might not want to piss Brady off, but in all seriousness, I think he would have done great if he could have had some time to learn behind Brady Quinn and
didn't have to get thrust in as
great
a freshman
leadership, character. Doing how to go about your business as a professional, as a leader. Jimmy would have, it would have been invaluable for Jimmy to learn that.
Yeah.
So, and then Everett's the other one in that conversation for me.
Okay.
He'd be the other one in that
conversation. You can have a 3 quarterback room. There's nothing wrong with that.
That's a heck of a room. Yeah. That's a heck of a room. I hope that changes in a couple of years, but somebody said, who would be the coach of your team in the 2000s? Well, Urban Meyer. That's who my coach is.
Oh, interesting.
Because remember, Urban coached at Notre Dame in the 2000s.
Yeah, because he was on Davy's staff.
Yep. And I believe his last year at Notre Dame was 2000. So, yeah, there you go.
He made it. He made it in by the skin of his teeth.
Somebody said no Ian Book. Oh, that's Tommy Guns. He's being sarcastic.
He's being himself.
Yep. I don't know who else. I mean, here's your options. You take Bob Davie, Ty Willingham, Charlie Weiss, or Brian Kelly, or Marcus Freeman. I'd probably go with Marcus Freeman next, just because he'd recruit and he understands the need to coach football a little bit more than Charlie. But you talk about in all seriousness, you have Urban as your head coach, Charlie Weiss as your offensive coordinator, Marcus Freeman running your defense.
Yeah, seriously.
And your lead recruiter. I'd have Harry Heaston as my O-line coach. I'd have Tony Alford coaching running backs.
Brian Mason is my
Brian Mason's without question my special teams coach. You probably get Mike Elson coaching your D-line, although, Greg Madison in his prime would have been a guy in consideration there. Marcus is coaching there. You got Urban is your head coach, you said, right? You'd have Mike Mickens coaching the corners.
Absolutely.
No question about that. Mike Denbrock could be my tight ends coach. No question about that. Receivers coach would be a little bit different. because you'd have Urban there, but he's the
say,
head coach.
Can't Urban coach a receiver?
Yeah, but he's the head coach. So
Right.
I'd have to think about the receiver one, to be honest with you. I'd have to think about that one a little bit. But I mean, honestly, with Urban Meyer as your head coach and Charlie Weiss as your quarterback's coach, you don't necessarily need a great recruiter at receivers coach. You just got to can coach the position. You're going to think about the dynamic recruiters you'd have on that staff.
That's a fun thing to think about, isn't it?
Yeah, buddy. Denbrock wouldn't be my receivers coach. He'd be my tight ends coach. He was more of a tight ends coach by trade. And when he coached the receivers at Notre Dame, he had a GA that helped him a bunch, Ryan Mahaffey. So he could do it, but he would have been better at tight end, in my opinion. He was a really good tight ends coach because he was a tackles tight ends coach at one point in time as well. But he could do it. He's a good coach. He's a good coach. Crystal Rose down there trying to start some problems. Vince, did you see her?
I did. I certainly did.
Yeah, I'd have to think about the receivers coach one. That's an interesting one. I have to think about that one a little bit. So anyway, that's it, Vince.
There it is. So thanks everybody for joining us.
Rob Ianello was a decent recruiter, overrated recruiter. He was an awful receivers coach. Awful receivers coach. So yes. That's it, Vince. Now you can take us out of here.
All right. Sounds good. But Brian, thank you for taking some time and joining us on the show today. Really appreciate it. Otherwise, it would have just been me blabbing on by myself. So I appreciate that very much. I would have been like another local talk show host who asks himself questions and then answers them. So I didn't want to be that guy. So I appreciate you joining up. And make sure you hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you know when we are coming up. It's always fun, always exciting. And yeah, what baseball dates are we looking for?
I don't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, UND.com, click baseball. That's what I would say. I know that they've got some interesting games coming up, but I'm not sure what baseball you're looking for. So anyway, for Brian, I'm Vince. Thanks everybody for joining us on IB Nation Sports Talk.